You ever walk into a room and instantly feel like something's off? Like the air's too still, too heavy, almost like the walls are holding their breath? Yeah, that was the vibe inside the Denver Police Academy auditorium that morning. It was supposed to be a quiet winter memorial, just a respectful ceremony for the officers they'd lost that year. Snow was melting off boots, people were shaking off the cold, kids bundled in thick jackets clinging to their parents' legs. But the second you stepped in, it felt wrong. Like the silence wasn't respect anymore. It felt like a warning. Rows of dark uniforms stretched across the hall. You could hear the scrape of chairs, the soft rustle of metals pinned to jackets, the dull whir of the old heater in the corner. Everything and everyone was frozen in this tight, polite quiet. And then, here's where it flips. K9 Atlas. Oh man, if you don't know that name, trust me, you will. Atlas was the German shepherd of the Denver K9 unit. Huge, muscular, the kind of dog you don't just look at. You feel him walk past you. A dog with presence, with history, with a resume, drug ops, rescues, commendations. The guy was a legend. But that morning, he wasn't acting like the calm, perfectly trained service dog everyone knew. Nope. He was restless. You could see it. Even before the ceremony started, Atlas kept shifting, nudging at his handler's leg, staring toward the back of the room like he was picking up something somebody else could sense. Officer Grant kept whispering, "Easy, boy. Settle, settle." But Atlas didn't settle. Anyway, the ceremony begins. People sit, flags lower. The room sinks into that heavy, respectful quiet. And then Harper Quinn, this tiny little girl in a pale blue coat, gets wheeled in by her mother, the wheels of her chair clicking softly across the floor. Nobody paid much attention at first. Families everywhere. Kids, spouses, grandparents. But then, something insane happened. Atlas snapped to attention. I mean, ears up, tail stiff, paws planted. His whole body tightening like a switch got thrown inside him. His eyes locked onto Harper's wheelchair, like it was the only thing that existed, and before anyone could react, he lunged. The sound of Atlas breaking formation hit harder than any gunshot, nails scraping the floor, chairs screeching, someone gasping loud as hell, Officer Grant shouting, "Atlas! Atlas! No!" But he wasn't listening. This dog, this disciplined, protocol-perfect dog, pulled so hard the leash snapped right out of Grant's grip. Officers in the front row jumped to their feet, hands moving on pure instinct, shock ripping through the room. Nobody expects a K9 to lose control, especially not Atlas. And he ran straight, dead straight, toward Harper's wheelchair. Her mom froze, hands hovering over the wheels, not sure whether to pull her daughter back or shield her. And Harper, she didn't scream, didn't flinch, just sat there, small, still, like she didn't even notice a 100-pound beast charging at her. Atlas skidded to a stop, millimeters from her, chest heaving, teeth bared. Not like he wanted to bite, but like he was trying to warn every single one of us. And then he started barking. Not random barking, not excited barking, not even protective barking. This was something else, something primal, desperate, like he was shouting at us, demanding us to look. Each bark echoing around the hall like gunshots off concrete. People stepping back, chairs scraping, the whole room unraveling in confusion and fear. Someone whispered, "What is happening?" Another muttered, "Is the dog malfunctioning?" Someone near the stage, "Pull her back! Pull the kid back!" But nobody moved, because Atlas wasn't barking at Harper. He stepped in front of her, planting himself between Harper and the rest of us, like he was shielding her, like he was daring anyone, anything, to try and come close. His stance dropped lower, wider, heavier, fur standing up along his spine. In that moment, he wasn't a dog. He was a wall, a living barrier made of muscle and instinct, and a grief none of us understood yet. And the room, dear God, it went still. Panic crept in quietly, crawling across every face. Officer Grant inching forward, terrified of setting Atlas off again. And Harper, sweet, silent Harper, just stared at him, her hands limp in her lap, her eyes reflecting the dog's trembling fury. Nobody knew why Atlas was losing it. But later, everyone would say the same thing. That was the moment everything changed. And, if you're wondering why Atlas exploded like that in the middle of the memorial, well, you kinda have to go back. Back to the night when everything for the Quinn family shattered. Because honestly, nothing in that auditorium made sense until you understand what happened 3 months earlier in Flagstaff, Arizona. So, yeah, here we go. It was Christmas Eve, one of those nights where the snow doesn't fall gently like in the movies. It attacks the windshield. Big, heavy flakes slamming sideways, the kind that make you grip the steering wheel a little tighter. The world outside the Quinn family's SUV was just darkness, snow, and more darkness. Sergeant Owen Quinn, yeah, that Owen Quinn, the guy every deputy in Coconino County looked up to, was driving his wife and daughter home from a little holiday event downtown. Hot cocoa cups still warm, lights twinkling on store windows, Christmas songs playing way too loud on the radio. Harper was in the back seat, humming quietly, tracing shapes on the fogged window with her mitten. Emily, her mom, kept turning around saying, "Sweetheart, you're gonna smudge the glass again." But she was smiling, the kind of smile you have when everything still feels right, still feels normal. If only they knew. The farther they drove, the quieter the world got. No cars, no streetlights, just that endless white blur of snow. Harper leaned forward and whispered, "Daddy, can we see the lights on the ridge?" And Owen, God, this part hurts. He nodded. "Yeah, Bug. We'll pass by, just a quick detour." And that detour, that tiny, innocent choice, became the moment that ripped the universe in half. They reached the curve on Route 180, The one everyone in Flagstaff knows gets dangerous when it snows. But the Quinns weren't speeding, weren't distracted, weren't doing anything wrong. It was the other car. You know that gut feeling you get when headlights suddenly appear where they shouldn't? Too high, too fast, too close. Like your brain is trying to process it, but can't keep up. Emily screamed first. Owen didn't scream. He reacted, instantly. Like the cop in him, the father in him, the protector in him all fused together in one split-second movement. The truck coming at them wasn't just drifting, it was skidding, sliding sideways, out of control, a 4-ton chunk of metal spinning across black ice straight toward the Quinns' SUV. Owen didn't reach for the brakes. He reached for Harper. Emily later said she didn't understand what was happening until she saw his whole body twist, arms reaching back, trying to shield their daughter with everything he had. And then, impact. A crack like the sky breaking open, metal folding, glass exploding, the whole world flipping end over end. You ever hear someone describe a car crash as loud and silent at the same time? Yeah, that's real. Harper heard the roar, but also a ringing, like the world had been stuffed with cotton. Then everything went still. Snow drifted through the broken windows. The smell of gasoline, cold air, blood, burnt rubber. The kind of smell you don't forget even if you live to 100. Emily was pinned in the front seat, coughing, choking, calling out for her husband. "Owen! Owen!" No answer. Harper tried to move, but she couldn't. Her legs wouldn't respond. Pain shot through her like knives twisting inside bone. She tried to scream. Nothing came out. Just a silent open mouth. And Owen, oh God, he was hunched over the back seat, his body covering Harper's, arms wrapped around her like a shield, like he'd done the only thing he had time to do, protect his baby. By the time first responders arrived, snow had piled high enough to bury most of the SUV, paramedics cutting metal, pulling doors, shouting commands. One firefighter whispered, "This guy. He used himself as a barrier." Another said softly, "He saved her life. No question." But Owen Quinn didn't make it. Harper was pulled out last, both legs crushed, nerves damaged, and, this part no one expected, her voice was gone. Not physically, emotionally. Trauma steals sound, steals words, steals the part of a child that believes the world is safe. Doctors told Emily she may not speak again for years, if at all. And from that moment on, Harper Quinn went silent. Not shy silent, not hurt silent, but empty. Like something inside her had been switched off. The whole county mourned Owen. The sheriff's office cried publicly, which never happens. And Atlas, Owen's K9 partner, he waited. For weeks. Sleeping beside Owen's locker. Whining whenever someone opened the door. pushing his nose into Owen's old uniform like he was trying to find a man who wasn't coming back. So when Atlas saw Harper again, not 3 months later, in that cold Denver auditorium, he didn't just see a little girl in a wheelchair. He saw the last person Owen ever protected, the last piece of the man he lost. But Harper's memory of that night, it was buried so deep it barely felt real anymore. She didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't ask for her dad. Just silence. A silence so heavy, no one knew how to break it. But, that was all before Atlas made his move in the auditorium. Before the barking. Before everything shifted. After everything that happened on that icy mountain road in Flagstaff, you'd think the story would just stop there. But, that's the thing about grief. It doesn't stay where it happened. It follows you. It leaks into rooms, into memories, into the way someone breathes. And honestly, Atlas carried that grief louder than any of them. Because here's the part people don't usually talk about. Atlas wasn't just Owen's K-9 partner. He was his shadow, his backup, his other heartbeat. These guys went through everything together. Drug raids near the Navajo line, search and rescue missions up Humphreys Peak, late-night patrols where it's just you, your flashlight, and a dog who knows your mood better than anyone on earth. Owen didn't just trust Atlas. He relied on him. You don't spend years with a dog like that without forming a bond people can't explain. And after Owen died, Atlas didn't adapt. He didn't move on. He didn't reassign. He didn't transition to a new handler. No. Atlas shut down. For the first week, he refused to leave Owen's locker. Officer Grant tried coaxing him. Captain Morales brought him bacon. Emily, Owen's widow, sat beside him whispering, "He loved you, buddy. He loved you so much." Atlas just stared at the locker door, and when they finally opened it, just to clean it out, Atlas shoved his nose inside like he expected Owen to be hiding there. The only thing left was Owen's winter duty jacket, the one he wore during snow operations. And, this part is rough. The jacket still had dried blood near the collar. Atlas laid down on top of it and didn't move. Day after day after day. You know that kind of grief where your body collapses because your heart can't carry its weight? That was Atlas. So when the Denver Police Academy hosted the memorial and brought Atlas as part of the honor line, nobody expected anything. They thought he'd sit quietly, maybe tremble, maybe whine, a grieving dog doing what grieving creatures do. But the moment Harper Quinn was wheeled into that hall, everything changed. It was like someone plugged Atlas into a high-voltage socket. Like an invisible thread yanked him forward before he even had time to think. 1 second he was standing with the other K-9s. The next he was lunging. Breath hitching, eyes wild but focused. Officer Grant later said, "I didn't lose control of him. It was like he wasn't mine for a second. Like something else called him." And honestly, he wasn't wrong. If you looked closely, really looked, you'd see something shift inside Atlas the moment he saw Harper. Ears back, pupils blown wide, posture changing from alert to something primal, something ancient, like he recognized her. Not her face, not her clothes, her scent, the scent of the little girl Owen Quinn died protecting. Atlas moved with a strange mix of fear and urgency, like he was terrified of losing her too. Officers stepped aside, not because they were scared, but because they could feel, literally feel something happening that wasn't theirs to interrupt. Atlas didn't bark at first. He just walked. Slow, deliberate, almost reverent. But when he got close enough to smell the faint hospital antiseptic on Harper's coat, close enough to feel her breath, the dam inside him broke. He barked like he was calling someone back from the dead, like he was shouting at the universe for taking Owen, like he was warning everyone in that hall. Don't touch her. Don't you dare touch her. But beneath the fury, there was something else, something nobody noticed at first. Atlas wasn't just protecting Harper. He was grieving with her. He pressed his nose forward, trembling, like he needed to confirm she was real, like if he didn't touch her, she'd vanish the way Owen did. And Harper, remember, this girl hadn't spoken in 3 months, hadn't reacted to anything, lived inside silence like it was her new home. But when Atlas stopped in front of her, her eyes flickered. Just a tiny movement, but enough to crack the ice around her soul. Because trauma recognizes trauma, loss recognizes loss. And somehow, those two broken souls found each other in a room full of people too stunned to breathe. Atlas wasn't being dramatic. He wasn't malfunctioning. He wasn't disobeying. He was coming home. To the only piece of Owen he had left. And maybe, just maybe, Harper felt that too. Because what happened next, what she did next, it would shake the entire room. But before we go there, let me ask you something. And be honest. If you were standing in that hall and saw a police dog explode toward a little girl, you would have thought he was A, protecting her, B, dangerous and out of control, C, sensing something the rest of us couldn't? Because Harper Quinn didn't just sit in that silver wheelchair. She disappeared inside it. Like she wasn't a kid anymore, just a shadow wearing a child's shape. She was right there in front of everyone, but somehow not there at all. Her little silver chair looked way too big for her body, her legs wrapped in soft braces beneath a thick blanket. Her hands, cold, actually cold. The kind of cold you see in someone who hasn't held anything warm in weeks. And her hair, light brown, usually fluffy, pulled back in a crooked little ponytail, like her mom tied it. But Harper didn't care enough to fix it. And, this isn't an exaggeration. Her eyes looked empty, not sad, not scared, just empty. Like someone switched off the lights inside her soul and forgot to turn them back on. People always say trauma changes kids, but seeing it, seeing a 6-year-old sit like a statue with a stare that cuts right through you, man, it hits different. When Atlas stopped barking and lowered himself in front of her, everyone in that hall turned to look at Harper. And the thing is, no one knew how to look at her. You could see it in their faces: shock, pity, confusion, fear, all swirling together, like they didn't know whether to comfort her or protect themselves from something too broken to touch. Even the kids in the back row, the ones playing with tiny American flags, stopped moving. A little boy whispered, "Mom, why she look like that?" And his mom just squeezed his shoulder, her eyes already glassy with tears. Harper didn't look at any of them. Not one. Her gaze stayed fixed on the floor, some scuffed tile with a scratch shaped like a tiny crescent moon, like that scratch was safer than the entire world around her. Her mom, Emily, had her hands on the wheelchair handles, but they weren't steady. Anyone could see the whiteness in her knuckles. You know that look people get when they're holding their whole life together with just their fingertips? Yeah, that was Emily. She leaned down, whispering, "Sweetheart, it's okay. You're safe. Mommy's right here." But Harper didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't tighten her fingers. She just stayed in that terrifying stillness. And people kept glancing away because it felt wrong, like witnessing something too private, too painful, too fragile. Something a child should never have to carry. You could almost hear their thoughts. How does a kid survive losing her dad like that? How does she move through life after that? How does she shut down that completely? And well, Harper didn't survive it. Not really. Her body survived. But her spirit, it stayed on that mountain road, trapped under crushed metal and snow. One woman whispered, "She looks like she's not here." Another murmured, "God, look at her eyes. They look hollow." Hollow, yeah. That's the word. Even Atlas felt it. His growls faded the second he saw Harper's face clearly. His body lowered, like he didn't want to scare her, like he was bowing to someone hurting even deeper than him. He took one slow step, then another, then paused, head tilted, ears low. It was like he was asking permission to come closer. And Harper didn't move. Not away. Not toward. Just frozen. Like a portrait instead of a person. Her lips pale. Her lashes barely flickering. Her breathing thin, quick. Like someone afraid to take full breaths because full breaths meant feeling something. And, the thing that shook people most wasn't the chair, or the braces, or even the silence. It was the way she seemed, unfinished. Like the world started writing her story, but stopped halfway through a sentence. The whole hall felt it. This heavy ache settling over everyone, parents pulling their kids closer, officers shifting awkwardly, someone whispering a prayer, someone else quietly wiping their eyes. Because Harper wasn't just a girl in a wheelchair. She was grief shaped into a child, a reminder that even the strongest families can break in ways no one can fix. and when Atlas gently stretched his neck toward her, slow, cautious, trembling, someone in the back whispered, "It's like she's a ghost." Yeah, a ghost in her own small body. And maybe that's why the room held its breath. Why even the toughest officers felt something claw up their throats. Harper Quinn wasn't living. She was surviving. Barely. But everything in that moment, Atlas shaking, Emily crying without sound, the entire hall frozen, was building toward something none of them saw coming. Because ghosts don't usually come back. But sometimes, all it takes is one creature who refuses to let them fade. Not because someone commanded him, not because he got tired, but because he finally saw Harper. Really saw her. And I don't know how else to put this, but he stopped barking the way someone stops screaming when they realize the person in front of them is in worse pain. Atlas lowered himself slowly, painfully slowly, until his belly touched the cold auditorium floor. And that was something he'd only ever done for one person in his entire life. Owen Quinn, the guy he'd follow into fire, into ice, into anything. And seeing Atlas do that in front of Harper, it was like watching grief recognize itself in another shape. His paws stretched out flat, his tail stopped, his ears dropped low, and his head bowed, just slightly, like he was saying, "I know you." Not you, the girl. Not you, the kid in the chair. But the pain inside you. Atlas crawled the last few inches forward, not because anyone told him to, but because something in him, something instinctive and ancient, was guiding him. The whole room felt it. You could practically taste the hush in the air, like everyone was afraid to breathe too loud and break whatever fragile magic was happening. Harper didn't move, but her eyes flickered. Barely. Like some tiny piece deep inside her cracked open for a second. Atlas froze again, studying her with those big amber eyes. The kind of eyes that look like they're holding the whole world inside them. His head tilted, soft, gentle. Nothing like the fierce, explosive dog from 2 minutes earlier. And I swear on everything, there was this moment where anyone watching could tell. Atlas wasn't looking at a stranger. He was looking at the last person who ever felt Owen's heartbeat. People always talk about dogs knowing scents. Dogs remember smells for years. Dogs track emotions. Sure. But this wasn't scent, recognition. This was soul recognition. Atlas leaned forward another inch, gently nudging his nose toward the blanket covering Harper's legs. Not touching, just close enough to feel the warmth. Then something hit him. Hard. You could see it. His body tensed. His breath hitched. His eyes widened. Not in fear, but in the kind of shock that comes when a memory punches you in the chest without warning. Because what Atlas smelled wasn't danger. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even the hospital antiseptic clinging to Harper's coat. It was Owen. Or rather, the faint trace of him that still lingered in Harper's world. maybe on her blanket, maybe on her hair, maybe on the tiny stuffed reindeer clipped to her chair. But whatever it was, it hit Atlas like a freight train. His nose dropped. His chin grazed the floor, and the whole auditorium seemed to collapse inward. People shifted uncomfortably. Parents choked up. Officers clenched their jaws. A few swallowed hard, staring like they were watching something sacred. Atlas let out the softest sound. Not a bark, not a growl, just this tiny, trembling whine, a sound that said, "I lost him, and so did you." Officer Grant, frozen behind them, whispered, "Jesus, he thinks she's him." But he wasn't exactly right. Atlas didn't think Harper was Owen. He thought Harper was what was left of him. The unfinished goodbye. The last heartbeat Owen shielded with his own. The last mission Owen entrusted to the world. Harper slowly lifted her eyes, just a little, toward the sound Atlas made. And the look on her face. God. It wasn't joy. It wasn't sadness. It was this fragile confusion. Like her soul recognized something before her brain did. She didn't reach out. She didn't speak. She didn't even blink fast. She just existed in that moment with Atlas. Two broken things recognizing the same fracture. The entire hall watched, barely breathing. You could almost hear the thought passing through everyone's mind. Atlas wasn't reacting to a child. He was reacting to Owen's memory inside her. The way she sat. The silence she lived in. The pain she didn't show. The shadow she had become. Atlas lowered his head even further until his nose touched the tip of Harper's shoe. His whole body trembled. Not fear, not aggression. Grief. Harper's hand twitched. Just once. Just enough for the world to notice. Emily gasped quietly. A single officer covered his mouth. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Because even if Harper didn't understand it yet, Atlas had already made his choice. Protect what Owen died protecting. No matter what. No matter who. No matter how broken they both were. It started small. So small most people didn't even catch it at first. Atlas had his head lowered, barely breathing. Like he was scared any sudden movement might shatter the fragile air between them. Harper looked at him. Actually looked at him. For the first time since being wheeled in. Her eyes, those empty, ghost-like eyes, flickered with something real. Not light, not hope, just recognition. And that tiny spark was enough to move her. Her fingers twitched. Once, then again, like her brain was trying to wake up parts of her she'd shut down for months. She didn't reach out. Didn't lift her whole hand. She just tightened her grip around the handle of the wheelchair. But that tiny motion, it felt like an earthquake. Someone whispered, "Did she just?" Someone else gasped softly. Even Atlas flinched, ears twitching forward. Harper's breathing changed next. Not louder, but sharper. Like her lungs were remembering what it felt like to actually need air. Emily leaned forward, voice shaking. "Harper?" Sweetheart, are you okay? Harper didn't look back, didn't blink. She just kept staring at Atlas like he was the only thing holding her to the earth. Atlas inched closer, his nose brushing the rubber of her wheelchair tire, and he moved as gently as if touching her might break him too. The entire auditorium held its breath. All the officers, all the families, all the kids. Every single person froze. Honestly, it felt like the world stopped spinning for a second. Harper's fingers tightened again, harder this time. Her shoulders trembled. Her chin quivered like she was fighting something inside her, something far too big for a child to face. And then it happened. A tiny sound, barely a whisper, broken, shaky, like a sound made from dust and memory. "Ah!" Emily gasped, hands flying to her mouth. But Harper wasn't done. Her lips moved again, slow, uncertain, like she was pushing through layers of fear that had built inside her since the night of the crash. "At." The sound was jagged, like it hurt to say it, like her throat was remembering how to make words after months of forgetting. Atlas lifted his head, ears straight up, eyes locked onto hers. And then, with one last trembling breath, she said it. Not loud, not clear, not perfect. But it was him, his name, spoken like a prayer. "Atlas!" Emily's knees buckled. She fell into the nearest chair and started sobbing. Not polite, quiet crying. No, the raw, shaking, unfiltered kind. The kind you let out when you've been holding your breath for 90 days straight. "Harper, oh my God. Baby." Officers in the front row, big, tough men who'd seen everything, stood there frozen. Some blinked too fast. One wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve. Another whispered, "Holy, holy hell." Atlas responded instantly, not barking, not whining. He pressed his forehead, soft, careful, against Harper's knee brace. That was it, his answer, his "I'm here," his "I know," his "I found you." Harper let out a breath, shaky, trembling, almost like the start of a sob. But it wasn't fear or pain. It was release. Months of silence, fear, trauma, pouring out in a single exhale. The room knew. Every single person in that hall knew. They were witnessing a miracle. Not the shiny kind from books, but the real, messy, imperfect kind that scars you and saves you at the same time. Someone whispered, "Did you hear that?" She talked. Another said, That dog brought her back." Emily reached for her daughter, voice trembling. "Sweetheart, can you say it again? Can you say his name again?" Harper didn't. Not yet. But she didn't look away from Atlas either. And that alone was more than enough. Because honestly, sometimes one word is all a soul needs to return to the world. Atlas stayed there, still, loyal, unblinking. Harper stayed there, shaking, awakening, breathing differently. Two broken things, recognizing each other and choosing to come back anyway. And that moment, that tiny, fragile, impossible moment, became the miracle everyone in that hall talked about for the rest of the year. Impossible whisper left Harper's lips. And after the whole hall practically shattered from the shock, something shifted in a way nobody could ever take back. It wasn't just that Harper said a word. It was who she said it to. And from that moment on, it was like Atlas decided, no, swore, that he wasn't letting her out of his sight again. Not for 1 second. And honestly, no one had the heart to stop him. The department made it official within 24 hours. Atlas was going with Harper. Everywhere. No exceptions. Not because of protocol. Not because of medical orders. But because every single person in that building watched a little girl come back to life when that dog touched her knee brace. Nobody argues with a miracle. The first big test came sooner than anyone expected. 2 days later at the hospital in Salt Lake City, Harper had to go in for a neurological checkup, which is just a fancy way of saying, let's poke and scan a child who already hates hospitals. The moment they rolled her inside, she tensed up. Her whole body went rigid. Her breathing sped up. Her eyes went flat, distant, that same empty stare from before. And then they heard it. A siren outside. Fast, loud, sharp. To anyone else, it was just an ambulance. But to Harper, it was that night all over again. The crash, the snow, the darkness, her dad's arm around her, the ringing in her ears. She started shaking so hard the blanket slipped off her lap. Emily tried to grab her hands, but Harper flinched away, breath cracking, chest heaving. Then, Atlas moved. He didn't bark, didn't panic, didn't even look around. He just stepped forward, pressed his huge head gently into Harper's chest, and held it there, firm, warm, steady, like he was giving her something to anchor to. Her tiny, trembling fingers curled into his fur, like she was holding on for dear life. And just like that, her breathing slowed, her shoulders softened, her eyes stopped darting. A nurse whispered, "That dog just did more in 10 seconds than medicine does in 10 weeks." And nobody argued. That night was the first night Harper slept longer than an hour. But even then, sleep came with nightmares, violent ones. But she never woke alone. Atlas would lift his head the moment she twitched, then climb slowly onto the empty space beside her and drape one paw over her small hand, like a weighted blanket, like a promise. And every time his paw touched her skin, the nightmares quieted. Emily started leaving the door open so Atlas could come and go whenever Harper made a sound. And he always knew. Always. One night, around 3 a.m., Emily peeked through the door and saw Harper curled toward Atlas, her forehead resting on his chest while he kept his chin on top of her head. Harper wasn't awake, not fully, but her lips moved a little. Not words, just soft breaths, like she was learning to talk again by practicing safety in her sleep. And that wasn't the only time Atlas stepped in. One afternoon at the grocery store, Harper hated crowds now. Someone dropped a glass jar in the next aisle. It shattered loud as hell. Harper jerked so hard her wheelchair nearly tipped. Before Emily could react, Atlas spun around, wedged himself between Harper and the aisle, and stood like a shield. Not aggressive, not barking, just present, solid, immovable. Harper reached for him instantly, hands shaking, breath wheezing. Atlas pressed into her, letting her hold his collar. And little by little, day by day, moment by moment, Harper started whispering again. Not to people, not to doctors, not even to her mom. Just to Atlas. Soft, broken words. Sometimes only syllables. Sometimes nothing more than a breath with shape. One evening, Emily recorded her whisper. It's okay. Atlas, I'm okay. You're okay. Not fluent, not loud, but real. And Emily cried. For a good reason this time. Teachers noticed it. Therapists noticed it. Neighbors noticed it. The girl who hadn't spoken to a human in months whispered to the enormous dog walking beside her. Atlas didn't just protect Harper. He rebuilt her. Not with lessons. Not with worksheets. Not with rules. But with presence. Instinct. And a kind of love that didn't need explanations. Harper crawled out of the darkness because Atlas walked beside her, matching her pace, guarding her shadows, absorbing her fear until her small voice found its way back to the world. And everyone knew, even if they never said it aloud. Atlas didn't need a badge to be a protector. He didn't need orders. He didn't need a uniform. He didn't need permission. He just needed Harper, and she needed him. That's all. If you had to pick the moment that hits your heart the hardest, would it be Atlas calming her panic in the hospital? 2. Him sleeping beside her through nightmares? 5. Him shielding her in the grocery store? 6. Or the fact that she only speaks to him. Harper wanted to go back to school. Yeah. School. The same place she hadn't stepped foot in since the accident. Emily almost said no at first. Because how do you send a little girl who barely talks, who still wakes up crying at night, who needs a dog just to breathe through loud noises, back into a building filled with kids, bells, chaos, everything? But Harper didn't ask twice. She whispered it once, soft, shaky, almost too small to catch. Atlas, come, school? And that was it. Decision made. Because if Harper wanted something, if she spoke it, nobody was going to take that miracle away from her. Willow Ridge Elementary already knew her story. Everyone had. The principal, Mrs. Landon, all warm smiles and cinnamon scent, didn't hesitate for even a second. Of course Atlas can come. He's family. And so Monday morning rolled around. But this wasn't just any Monday. It was Hero Monday. The day each kid brought or talked about someone they considered their hero. Nobody knew Harper was coming, not even her class. So the moment her wheelchair rolled through the front doors, Atlas walking beside her, tall and steady, the whole hallway just stopped. Kids whispered. Teachers froze. Even the janitor paused mid-mop stroke. Harper stared at her lap, fingers gripping the edge of her blanket. But Atlas. He scanned the hallway like Secret Service. Chest out, ears forward, tail low but steady. A don't mess with her energy radiating off him like heat. And slowly, warm, curious smiles began appearing on kids' faces. Someone whispered, "That's the dog from the news." Another, "He's huge." A third, "I want to pet him, but I'm scared." But nobody approached. They could feel the seriousness around him. They understood. Finally, time for assembly. The gym filled with tiny chairs, superhero posters, and a huge banner reading, "Who is your hero?" Kids took turns. A paramedic dad, a Marine sister, a pet ferret named Captain Nibbles who stole the show for a minute. Then, Mrs. Landon looked toward the back. "Harper? Sweetheart? Would you like to go next?" The room turned. Harper froze. Shoulders tight, breath shallow. Not fear. Just that heavy moment before courage decides to step out. Atlas nudged her elbow, almost whispering, "It's okay. I'm here." Harper nodded, tiny, quick, and Emily wheeled her forward. The gym fell silent. Not polite silence. Reverent silence. Atlas walked like a knight escorting royalty. Each step echoed. Each breath felt like a miracle. Emily stopped at the ramp. Harper pressed her wheelchair joystick by herself. 3 teachers cried instantly. She rolled to the center of the stage. Atlas sat beside her, tall, proud, unshaken. Mrs. Landon crouched beside her, whispering, "Take your time, sweetheart." Harper swallowed. Fingers twisted into her blanket. Eyes flicked toward Atlas. He looked up. She looked back. And then, quiet, clear, stronger than anything she'd said in months. Harper spoke. My hero is..." The entire audience inhaled at the same time. Harper's voice wobbled. Her hand found Atlas's collar. "My dad. He saved my life." Emily covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. Harper took another tiny breath. But when my dad couldn't stay." She leaned her forehead against Atlas's ear. "Atlas saved my heart." Silence. Like the universe paused. Then the room broke. Teachers crying, kids clapping, parents wiping eyes, the counselor openly sobbing into a tissue box. Atlas didn't move. Heroes don't flinch during applause. He just sat, calm, strong, like it meant nothing and everything. Harper placed her tiny hand on his back, and he leaned into her, slow, gentle, full of meaning. That was the moment Willow Ridge Elementary understood. This wasn't just a dog, and this wasn't just a girl. This was a story still unfolding. After Harper somehow stood in front of her whole school and said the most heartbreakingly brave sentence anyone had ever heard, life didn't magically fix itself overnight. But it did start shifting, slowly, gently, the way spring creeps back into Colorado after a long winter. The first big change? Harper wanted to go outside again. Yeah, outside. The place she used to avoid like it was made of ghosts. It started one late afternoon when the sun hung low and golden over Denver, and Harper whispered, "Mom, Atlas, Park?" Emily almost dropped the mug in her hand. She didn't even say yes. She just nodded so fast she looked dizzy. And the next morning, they drove toward Rocky Mountain National Park, the place Owen used to take Harper before everything fell apart. The moment they arrived, something shifted in the air. I don't know how to explain it, but the world just softened, like even the mountains were holding their breath for her. Harper's wheelchair rolled slowly along the path, wheels bumping gently over the reddish dirt. Atlas walked beside her. No leash, because he didn't need one. His pace matched hers perfectly. Every time the trail dipped or tilted, he moved closer, his shoulder brushing her arm, steadying her without making a big deal out of it. It felt like watching a pair who had walked this trail together their entire lives. The wind was soft that day, warm for a Colorado morning. It ruffled Harper's hair, brushing stray strands across her cheek. She didn't push them away. She just let the wind move through her. Emily walked behind them, hands in her jacket pockets, watching like she was witnessing something sacred. And then, out of nowhere, Harper said, "Mom, the sun feels different today." Emily smiled. "Different good?" Harper nodded. "Uh-huh. Good." Atlas stopped walking and looked up at her, tail giving one slow wag. Not excited, more like approval. They followed the trail until it opened into a wide meadow, the kind that makes you want to lie in the grass and stare at the sky. Harper's eyes went wide, really wide, the way a kid's eyes should. She pointed toward wildflowers swaying in blues, yellows, purples. "Pretty," Emily whispered back. "They really are." But the moment nobody expected, the miracle hidden in the quiet, came next. Harper asked for her sketchbook, that old bent sketchbook she hadn't touched since the accident. Before, she only drew in dark colors, heavy blacks, jagged grays, scribbles full of hurt. But now, she picked up the yellow crayon. Yellow, like sunlight. Emily tried not to cry watching her daughter choose light instead of shadows. Harper started drawing the meadow, slow, careful strokes that felt like her soul remembering how to move. Atlas lay at her feet, chin resting on her shoe, tail tapping the dirt every few seconds. And Harper talked. Not much, not loud, but more than she ever had outside therapy. Whispering, "Look, flower, pretty sky. You hear that bird? Her voice trembled, but it was alive. She switched crayons, blue, green, pink, filling the page with color instead of fear. Emily sat in the grass watching her daughter come back to life one stroke at a time. Then Harper paused. She looked toward the empty trail, the one Owen used to walk with them. She stared silently, long, still, listening. Emily stepped forward gently. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Harper nodded slowly, then said something that broke Emily's heart in the softest way. "Mom, I feel like Daddy's walking next to us." Emily blinked fast, trying not to let tears fall. Harper touched Atlas's head, brushing the soft fur between his ears. "Atlas hears him. I think he hears Daddy's footsteps." Atlas lifted his head, not because of the words, but because of the feeling behind them. He turned toward the empty trail and stared, calm, steady, like he was acknowledging someone unseen. Harper kept drawing. Soft strokes, warm colors. Nothing like before. It wasn't just art. It was healing. Atlas circled once and settled behind her wheelchair, back pressed gently against her legs. A silent promise. "I've got you." They stayed for hours, letting the sun warm their faces, letting the wind braid through Harper's hair, letting time do whatever it needed to do. And for the first time since that horrible night in Flagstaff, Harper didn't look like a ghost anymore. She looked like a kid again, a quiet one, a gentle one, but a living one. She used a soft orange crayon to add tiny footsteps beside her drawing of Atlas. Emily whispered, "Whose footsteps are those?" Harper didn't hesitate. "Daddy's." It began small. A mom at Willow Ridge posted a photo from Hero Monday. Then another parent shared a short clip of Harper touching Atlas's collar on stage. And you know how it goes. One share becomes 10, 10 becomes 100, and suddenly the whole district was talking about them. But then it spread farther, way farther. By the end of that week, local Denver stations were running pieces like, "The Little Girl Who Spoke Again Because of a Dog." K9 Atlas Brings Hope to Flagstaff Crash Survivor. A father protects his daughter, even after death. People cried watching the clips. People reposted them saying things like, "We needed this," or "This is what the world should look like." And Harper, the girl who used to hide from the world, suddenly became its quiet little heartbeat. But here's the thing. It wasn't fame. It wasn't attention. It wasn't sympathy. It was something deeper. Because people didn't just see a story about a girl and a dog. They saw love that outlived a tragedy, faith that survived a crash, loyalty that didn't die with its owner, healing carried on 4 paws and a beating heart. And, this might sound dramatic, but the story felt like a warm gust of air blowing through a winter everyone had been stuck in for too long. Colorado isn't a small state. People mind their business. People move fast. People carry heavy things quietly. But suddenly, grocery clerks were talking about Harper. Firefighters were sharing Atlas's photo during shifts. Nurses printed the story and pinned it in break rooms. Veterans whispered, "That dog. He gets it. He knows what losing someone feels like." And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, people kept repeating the same sentence. There are heroes that don't need badges. One night, around 8 p.m., Emily found a stack of letters on their porch. Handwritten, colored, stamped from all over Colorado. Some were from kids. "Harper, you're brave. Atlas is cool. I want to meet him." Some from parents. "Your daughter reminded me to slow down and love harder." Some from people who had lost someone too. "Your story helped me breathe for the first time in months." Emily cried on the kitchen floor reading them. Not sad tears. Something gentler. Like realizing the world wasn't as cold as she thought. But the letters weren't the only thing. It was the shift in how people talked about grief. Usually when someone dies, people lower their voices. They whisper. They avoid eye contact. They say, "I'm sorry for your loss," and then disappear. But Harper and Atlas, they made people look grief in the face and see beauty inside it. Because Owen didn't just die in that snowstorm. His love kept going. His protection kept working. His presence kept returning in the softest, most unbelievable ways. Through Atlas's loyalty, through Harper's healing, through tiny miracles hiding in ordinary moments. People started writing things like, "Love doesn't stop just because a heartbeat does. Some bonds change shape but never break. Healing isn't loud. Sometimes it whispers." And all of it, every quote, every repost, every midnight breath, boiled down to one truth. Atlas wasn't just a dog. Harper wasn't just a survivor. Owen wasn't just a fallen officer. Together, they became a living, breathing reminder that some warriors don't wear medals, some protectors don't need uniforms, some heroes walk on four paws. One radio host said it best in a late-night segment. "Listen, I know the world's messy, I know it's loud, and angry, and tiring. But this little girl and her dad's K9 partner, they're showing us something we forgot. Love outlasts everything, even death." Another commentator said, "Atlas didn't save Harper's life. He saved her future." And then there was the line that went viral everywhere. "Some warriors don't need rank or recognition. Their hearts are big enough to save a child without being asked." That one hit people hardest. It wasn't poetry. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't meant to be deep. But it was true. Because anyone who saw Harper on that stage with Atlas by her side knew exactly what it meant. You could feel it in your bones, even if you couldn't put it into words. It was the cold night truth settling into people's hearts. Love survives. Faith returns. Loyalty doesn't die. And heroes come in all shapes, even four-legged ones. Why did Atlas bark at Harper's wheelchair that first day? Why that bark? Why that intensity? Why did it feel like a warning and a heartbreak all mixed together. Even the most experienced officers didn't know. And honestly, it started bothering them, like an itch they couldn't reach. So the department called in a specialist. Not just any specialist. Dr. Lawson, a well-known canine behavior expert from Tucson, Arizona. The guy who'd worked with military dogs, PTSD canines, bomb units. If a dog had a problem no one else could solve, they called Lawson. He arrived quiet, observant, wearing a worn denim jacket with the elbows faded. He watched Atlas for 5 minutes, just 5, and already nodded like puzzle pieces were sliding into place. Emily stood near Harper, clutching her daughter's shoulders like she needed the support more than Harper did. Officer Grant explained everything. How Atlas broke formation, how he lunged, how he froze in front of Harper, how he bowed, how he trembled. Lawson didn't interrupt, didn't judge, just listened. Then he crouched beside Harper's wheelchair, slow, gentle, and examined the silver frame. He ran a gloved finger along one wheel, staring at something nobody else could see. He frowned, then said a sentence that made everyone's stomach drop. Do you guys realize there's dried blood on this? Emily gasped. Blood? No, that's impossible. Harper hasn't. But Lawson shook his head. It's old blood, he said quietly. Not hers. He took a cotton swab from his kit, touched the wheel gently, lifted a faint reddish smear to the light, and added, almost whispering, "This blood came from an ambulance stretcher." Silence. Thick. Heavy. Impossible. Harper looked up, confused, but calm. Atlas stood beside her, tail still, ears forward, alert. Officer Grant swallowed hard. Wait, you mean, like from the night Owen? Lawson nodded once, and that one nod sent a wave of realization flooding through the room. Suddenly, everything made sense. The barking, the urgency, the trembling, the way Atlas pushed past officers like he was running toward a moment instead of a person. Lawson spoke gently, like he knew the words would cut. The wheelchair's tire must have rolled through some dried blood at the ER, probably the Bay Area. If staff were overwhelmed that night, they may not have cleaned the floor completely. Emily pressed a hand to her chest. Oh my God. Lawson continued. A dog like Atlas, with the bond he had with Sergeant Quinn, he'd recognize that smell anywhere. Months later, diluted, microscopic. He looked at Atlas, who sat perfectly still, like he understood every word. When Atlas smelled that on the wheelchair, he didn't think Harper was just a child in trouble. Lawson paused. Let the truth land. Let it sting. He thought she was injured the same way Owen was. Emily's face crumpled, tears spilling fast. That's why he barked? That's why he panicked? Lawson nodded. To Atlas, that scent wasn't just blood. It was memory, pain, loss. It pulled him straight back to the moment he lost his partner. He turned to Officer Grant. That wasn't aggression. It wasn't disobedience. It wasn't confusion. Another pause. That was grief. Raw, unfiltered grief. The room went still. Even Harper, who didn't understand fully, seemed to feel the weight of it. She reached down, placing her small hand on Atlas's head. He leaned into her palm instantly. Lawson's voice softened. And you know what else? Atlas didn't bark at her. He barked because he thought something was happening again. Something he failed to stop once. And this time, he was trying to stop it. Emily sobbed. Grant whispered, "Jesus, Atlas. Buddy." But Lawson wasn't finished. There's one more thing. The bowing, the whining, the crawling forward, those are responses to a command. Emily shook her head, wiping tears. A command from who? I didn't... Lawson looked at her gently. Not you, from Owen. The room froze. Grant stepped forward. What do you mean? Lawson exhaled. Sergeant Quinn trained Atlas personally, and he used one final command the night he died. A command Atlas never forgot. He looked up, eyes soft. If I can't protect her, you protect her, no matter what. Emily collapsed into a chair, a sob tearing out of her like something breaking free. Harper placed her hand against Atlas's cheek, whispering something too soft to hear, and Atlas closed his eyes. Not from pain, not from fear, from peace, because he was doing exactly what he'd been told to do. Protect Owen's little girl. Even if it broke him, even if it hurt, even if it meant reliving the worst night of his life. That was the truth hidden inside the bark. The truth nobody knew until now. But, the story didn't end there. It didn't even slow down. Because the department had a decision to make. Atlas wasn't just a working dog anymore. He wasn't a K-9 unit member balancing patrols and training. He wasn't the fierce, disciplined guardian who followed commands with military precision. He had chosen his new mission, and everyone saw it. So one chilly Friday morning in early spring, Captain Morales called a small gathering behind the station. Nothing big, nothing flashy, just a handful of officers, a folded flag, and Harper sitting in her silver wheelchair with Emily behind her. Atlas stood beside her, alert, calm, watching every movement like this moment meant something. And honestly, it did. Morales cleared his throat. I guess there's no fancy way to say this, so I'll just say it. Atlas has served this department with honor for years, but his duty now is somewhere else. Emily squeezed Harper's shoulders. Morales continued, voice thickening. Effective today, Atlas is officially retired from service. Atlas didn't react. He didn't understand paperwork, but the officers around him did. Men who rarely cried wiped their eyes quietly. Morales stepped closer and placed a hand on Atlas's collar. And he is being adopted, officially, by the Quinn family, where he belongs. Harper inhaled sharply, fingers tightening on her chair. Atlas nudged her knee as if he felt the shift in her heartbeat. Morales knelt down, eye level with Atlas. "Take care of her, buddy." Atlas didn't bark, didn't move, just stared back with those deep amber eyes that looked like they held Owen's memory inside them. Later that afternoon, Harper asked to go home the course. "Long way." Emily didn't question it. She loaded the chair, seat-belted Atlas in the back, because only Emily would seat-belt a German shepherd, and drove toward the quiet outskirts of Denver. The sky was golden, one of those Colorado sunsets painted like someone showing off. Light poured over the rooftops, the pine trees, the wide fields stretching past the Quinn home. Emily parked. Harper wanted to sit outside. So they settled under the old elm tree, the same one Owen used to hang Christmas lights on even when it wasn't Christmas. Harper reached for Atlas. He came instantly, laying beside her wheelchair so their heads were almost level. After a long, thoughtful silence, Harper whispered, "Atlas, Daddy sent you." Atlas lifted his head. Harper swallowed hard, voice trembling but steady enough to hold meaning. "He sent you, so I wouldn't stay in the dark." The wind brushed her cheek. Atlas leaned forward, pressing his head gently against her chest. Not too hard, just enough. Harper closed her eyes. Emily covered her mouth, and for a moment, everything went still. Not dead still, not empty still, just warm, soft, sacred stillness. Like the world folded itself around that one moment. Harper rested her hand on Atlas's neck, stroking that soft patch of fur near his jaw. Then she whispered, "You brought me back." Atlas didn't understand words, but he understood tone, emotion, grief, love. All the invisible threads tying two souls together. He leaned harder, curling around the base of her wheelchair like a shield, like a promise, like a vow he didn't need words for. Emily stepped back, wiping tears, but smiling too. The kind of smile that means something beautiful survived something awful. Neighbors walking by paused, not in pity, but in awe, because that scene, it wasn't just a girl and her dog. It was healing. Light creeping back into a place that forgot what warmth felt like. From that day on, anyone who saw Harper and Atlas moving slowly down the street, her tiny hand on his back, his huge frame matching her pace, felt something inside themselves soften. Colorado didn't forget that story. Not because it was sad, not because it was dramatic, but because it reminded people of something they'd stopped believing. Sometimes, in the middle of the darkest grief, love sends help in the shape of fur and four paws. And as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink, Harper whispered one last thing into Atlas's ear. "As long as you're here, the dark won't come back." Atlas answered with a slow, gentle nudge against her heart, a touch that said, "I'm here, for as long as you need, and you'll never face the shadows alone again." Before we close this chapter, let me ask you honestly, from the heart, if you were watching that moment, the sunset, the little girl, the retired K9 curled against her. What would you feel? A hope? B. Gratitude? C. Something deeper you can't even put into words?